1800s, women were seen as or classified as second-class citizens who were denied many of the rights. For example, we were not allowed to engage into any contracts, we were not allowed to own any property, and we were not encouraged to further our education as we do today. Women were restricted to just focusing on their home and family back in the 1800s. But one of the most important rights that women were very concerned of gaining was the right to vote. Surprisingly, it has not been 100 years yet since women first gained the right to vote. Today I will be talking about Susan B. Anthony, who was one of the most remembered advocates during the women's suffrage movement. She is remembered by her famous speech, which is titled "On Women's Right to Vote." And Anthony says in her speech, "It was we the people, not we the white male citizens, but we the whole people who formed the Union." Now, despite the opposition that Susan B. Anthony faced when trying to trying to fight because of the women's rights, Susan B. Anthony became more than an advocate. She became the icon of the women's suffrage movement. So now, if anybody thinks about Susan B. Anthony, they pretty much link her to the women's rights movement. So again, today I will provide an analysis on Anthony's famous speech. I will begin by telling you a little bit about her background, and then I will proceed by telling you how and where her speech came about, and then finally I will tell you how her speech bettered our society. So let me begin by telling you who Susan B. Anthony was. Susan B. Anthony was born in a small town called Adams, Massachusetts, according to Rhodes, who is an author of the Smithsonian magazine. She published an article in 2011 and continues by saying that she was raised by a Quaker family that grew up with long activist traditions. And Rhodes continues to say that Susan B. Anthony delivered many presentations and lectures in order to, with the purpose of gaining the right to vote. And then Rhodes continues to say that Anthony and her family moved to, Susan B. Anthony and her family moved to Rochester, New York in 1845, where they first became active with the anti-slavery movement. A couple years later, she met Elizabeth Cady Stanton, which we all know she was the leader of one of the women's suffrage organizations, and many sources say that that could have been the beginning of Susan B. Anthony's interest into the women's suffrage movement. However, Lucy Stone, which was another advocate, takes the credibility for converting Susan B. Anthony into to the cause of the women's rights. What happened there was Susan B. Anthony attended one of Lucy Stone's speeches, and that was again that was the reason why she became interested in the women's rights. So how and when Susan B. Anthony delivered her speech? Well, Susan B. Anthony casted an illegal vote in the presidential election of 1872, according to NOLO Law for All, which is an online legal encyclopedia. And then they continue to say that Susan B. Anthony was also tried and fined for $100, which she refused to pay. And as a result, in order to defend her rights, she delivered her famous speech before the court. So NOLO Law for All continues to say that she did not get sentenced to prison. And again, Susan B. Anthony invoked the preamble into her speech, which we know, which I would like to recite it to you, as it says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America." Now, she was pointing out that we, the people of the United States, and not we, the white male citizens, which was one of the most important parts of the speech, at least to me, it was one of the important parts. And at the end of her speech, NOLA Law for All continues to say that she challenged her audience by saying, "Are women persons?" Now, that really got to the court, and that made them think. However, nothing was passed. Nothing was passed during her lifetime, because Susan B. Anthony died in 1906. However, she never lost hope that one day women will have the right to vote. And according to the official website of the National Park Service, which is a subpart of the Department of Interior of the United States of America, Anthony always believed that failure is impossible. And that's one of her most remembered quotes, again, because she never gave up. And even after her death, women continued to fight for women's rights. Her continued advocacy for women's rights paved the way to Congress to ratify the Constitution in 1920 with the 19th Amendment, which finally gave the women right to vote, according to the National Park Service website. So in closing, Susan B. Anthony was known as the women's suffrage superhero. Again, because when you think about Susan B. Anthony, you relate her to the women's suffrage movement. I am sure most of you already knew who Susan B. Anthony was, but for those who didn't, now you know a little bit about her background and also how her speech came about, and finally how her speech promoted the betterment to our society, resulting in the 19th Amendment being ratified in the Constitution.